Hey, sixth grade, it's Mr. Gilbert,
And Mr. Stoffer.
And Miss Russo.
and we just like to know that we are here to help. So, this video is going to give you a brief rundown of what this week is going to look like for ELA class.
So this week, you are going to choose one of the 3 essay prompts to write about Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. So the first option is compare and contrast Cassie's perspective from the beginning of the novel to the end. So you're going to think about Cassie's point of view, and you're going to write about what her point of view is in the beginning of the book, and compare that and contrast it to the end of the book. The second option is compare and contrast the perspectives of 2 adults from the novel and their method of protecting their family. So for this one, you are going to pick 2 adults, any 2 adults from the book, compare and contrast them and how their methods of protecting their family are done similarly or differently. The third one, how does Mildred Taylor's use of figurative language impact the tone of the story as it progresses? So for the third option, you're going to be thinking about figurative language and the description that the author uses that impacts the tone of the story.
Once you pick one of those options to write your essay about, you're going to have to think, how am I going to effectively brainstorm and outline my introductory paragraph? Because the intro paragraph is the very first thing your reader is going to see, and it's going to be a map for the rest of your essay. So a useful method for this is the GST method, and it's really effective for writing really smart, well put together introduction paragraphs and conclusion paragraphs. As a reminder, the G stands for a general statement. What is the basic topic of this essay that you will be writing about? You have to assume that the reader has never read this book and doesn't know what the book is specifically about. After your reader knows that, you can move on to writing a specific statement where you actually mention the name of the text and the author that wrote it. In this case, Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, and Mildred Taylor. Once your reader knows exactly what text you're going to be pulling information from, you're going to have to write a thesis statement, which is where you as the writer get to show your voice and show your perspective on the topic. What are you arguing? And why does the reader care about the rest of your essay? This is where you can clearly state that for the reader. So let's look at an example. Let's say we have, in the early 1900s, American schools segregated students based on their race. Mr. Stoffer, what do you think the topic of this essay is particularly about based on that sentence?
Well, even if I hadn't read Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, based on what I'm reading here, it sounds like you're going to tell me about school segregation.
Bingo. That is the topic, and you get that from the very first line. So once we have that down, we can say, in Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, Mildred Taylor shows the impact of this segregation has on the experiences specifically on a Black family called the Logans. So now we're getting a little bit tighter, and our reader knows exactly what we're talking about. And once the reader understands the book that we're pulling evidence from, now we can get to our argument. This story shows that segregated schools had a more negative impact on Black students than white students. So now there's something that we can talk about school segregation, specifically involving race and specifically involving negative and positive impact on students.
So once you've got that really strong, juicy introduction, you're going to get into the meat and potatoes of your essay. Those are your body paragraphs, right? So this is where you're going to back up that argument you're making and pull evidence right from the book to do it. So for that, we use something called the ACE method, the ACE. So the A of our ACE method, we use it for our body paragraphs. The A of our ACE method is to answer the question directly. So before you write that first line in your body paragraph, go back and reread the question you're answering. Make sure you understand what is the question asking you, all right? Once you know what that question is asking you, you're going to write a sentence that introduces your body paragraph that answers that question. Then once you've answered that question directly, you're going to pull out your copy of Roll of Thunder. You're going to open up to a specific page or chapter, You're going to tell us what page or chapter that is, and you're going to cite a specific example from the story, right? So this is where you ground your argument in what you read exactly. What details in the story led you to this answer, and where could I, as a reader, find those details if I wanted to pick this book up and look for them? Once you've answered that question and cited your evidence, that's when you bring in your thinking as the author of this essay, and you explain the connection you're making between the details in the story and the argument of your essay. How is this piece of evidence answering the question that you've been asked? How do the details connect to your thesis? So let's look at an example again from our sample essay about school segregation. If I wanted to answer directly a question about school segregation, I could say, one way that segregated schools created inequality was because white students rode a bus to school while Black students were forced to walk every day. That is a general answer that answers the question, and it connects, as we know, to several moments in our story. So I'm going to pick one of those moments. When I think about the Logans walking to school, I think a lot about chapter 3 of our book. So I might say, in chapter 3 of Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry, the Logans get splashed with dirty water when the white students' bus passes them on a rainy morning. That is one specific moment from the text that I have pulled, and in one sentence, I have paraphrased what I remember happening in that part of the story. So even if my reader hasn't read the book, they can read this sentence and know what I'm talking about. Now that I've answered the question and I've cited my evidence, I'm going to bring in my own thinking, and I'm going to connect the two. So I'll say, if the Logans were able to ride a bus to school as well, they would not have suffered this embarrassing and uncomfortable experience. So if I hadn't put that information in, my reader might be wondering, well, what relation is there between this moment in the story and buses contributing to inequality? But by providing this third sentence, I'm explaining the connection for my reader.
Okay, so you're going to check Google Classroom every day this week, where we're going to post a Google form. You're going to use the Google form each day to plan out different parts of your essay. So on Monday, you're going to focus on the introductory paragraph using the GST method. On Tuesday, you're going to use body paragraph number 1 with the ACE method. On Wednesday will be body paragraphs 2 and 3. And then on Thursday, you're going to finish with your conclusion paragraph form. On Friday, we're going to join our Zoom class together, where we're going to discuss the things that you've worked on all week in your Google Forms, and we're going to get some feedback from each other. So you might be able to share out some of the evidence that you've used. Maybe you're stuck on something and you want to talk about it with your classmates. And we're also going to review how to take the information from the Google form and put it into your rough draft. And also, please reach out with any questions. We have office hours on Monday and Wednesday from 1 to 2, where you can reach out to us directly in our Zoom calls, or you can always email us during the week.
All right.
Bye for now.
Writing 6th grade.